And now we're gonna get into Shaq Diesel, man. Apparently, Shaq Diesel is lonely, and he is using his past errors in life to coach others on how to handle their careers post retirement. And one of the primary things that he is telling people is to not take family for granted because you don't want to end up alone. And so Shaq, he does a podcast, right? I think it's called the Big Podcast or something like that. And he recently had Jason Kelce, brother of Travis Kelce, on his show. I think, and Jason Kelce recently announced his retirement. Is that correct? I'm pretty sure like Jason Kelsey's retiring. And so Jason Kelce joined Shaq on the show, and Shaq was just kind of saying, hey, man, certain things you want to not take for granted because you don't want to end up alone. I got this big old house that I'm living in, and, I forsake my family too much, and now I'm alone in this big old house. I got all this success and nothing to show for it, nobody to share it with. So, to provide some context here, real quick, this says Shaq reveals lonely life while telling Jason Kelce to enjoy retirement. Shaq painted a sobering picture of his post retirement life while interviewing Jason Kelce on the Big Podcast. Enjoy your family, brother. I lost my family and I didn't have anybody. You got the ring. I lost my whole family. I'm in a 100,000 square foot house all by myself, Shaq lamented. While sad to hear from the Hall of Famer, he might be trapped in a prison of his own making. In a previous episode of the podcast, Shaq advocated against men sharing their feelings with women. Whenever something goes down, whenever something goes down, they throw it back in your face. Shaq reasoned when asked why he doesn't open up to his partners. Shaq is divorced and has since struggled to hold down a relationship long term. In the past, the Hall of Famer has admitted to making mistakes and being greedy in his first marriage. However, the sharing of feelings doesn't appear to be a mistake Shaq thinks he's made. So blah 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 blah. The rest of that is just a bunch of random stuff with not related to this particular topic. So here's a brief clip of Shaq talking to Jason Kelce and telling him to not take family for granted.
My advice to you is if you are going to retire,
Yes.
accept it. Enjoy your family, brother.
Thank you.
I made a lot of dumb mistakes to where I lost my family and I didn't have anybody. That's not the case for you. So enjoy your beautiful wife, enjoy your beautiful kids, and never dwell on what we had.
Yeah.
What we had is what we got. You got the ring. People know who you are. Enjoy it. Because again, I was an idiot. And I've talked about this a long time. Lost my whole family. Been a 100,000 square foot house by myself. That's when I got. But again, the way I was raised, up,
Yeah.
man up,
Yeah.
deal with it. But
Hell is that? Hellman's?
that's my advice to you.
Bro, Shaq got like a zillion endorsements. Shaq is the endorsement. Shaq is the endorsement king. So in all likelihood, he's endorsing some crap, and so he has it there on the table. If I had to guess,
Hey, get the bag, I guess, bro. God,
bro,
Hellman?
Shaq is the king of endorsements, man. That guy, there's no limit to the amount of stuff that he'll do commercials for.
Clearly.
But so there you go, man. So there's Shaq, kind of telling Jason Kelce to enjoy family and not make the mistake of taking family for granted. You don't want to be in a 100,000 square foot house all by yourself. What do you think about that, man? You feel bad for Shaq? What are your thoughts on that?
I think that he came off real genuine right there. I think that was a real AAA meeting kind of confession that he made. It was like it was his turn to stand up in front of a support group and explain to everybody the mistakes that he made in his life in hindsight. And that wasn't just for Sir Kelce, that was for everybody watching, man. He's made remarks in the past about regrets on his marriage and how he handled things, and this is in line with all of that. And at some point, you would really, if you didn't already, genuinely believe that this man is really sorry for how he conducted himself. Enough so, the interesting part about that was leave it on the field kind of thing. Like, hey, don't worry about who you were. you did that. You got your ring. Basically, it's over. So go be as regular as you can, and do family, and not do I'm still a celebrity. One thing that one of the reasons why I wasn't the biggest Shaq fan, while he was, dominating uh, in the late 90s, early 2000s, I thought he was a little too arrogant. Felt like he was a little too full of himself. And not in a way of being confident in your game, because he was that too, but there was also this edge of he's bigger, and he's just better than everybody. Not on a basketball court, he's just better than you. And I didn't care for that. That side of him, I would say. I seen it firsthand when he came to the Heat, how he had a diva mentality himself. Now you can blame these kids nowadays for having a diva mentality, but Sir Diva right here, he if we want to talk about load management, this guy, he was at least mastering that when he was in Miami. He took those games off because the playoffs only matter. That sounds like a lot what's going on right now, but I digress. This isn't a bashing Shaq moment. This is really me, really like trying to get into why I wasn't a fan, so much, even though I liked his game, and it's how can you not kind of thing. So fast forward, for him to say that, because he's definitely calmed down a lot. He's like um you know and he sounds retired. He sounds like a parent that was a hard ass parent, but they don't really have to parent like that no more. So they chilling and shit. And so he sounds like he's in a place where he can actually do a lot of life reflecting, outside of being lonely in his house. It sounds like he's done a lot of reflecting. Instead of pointing fingers at people, he sees that he was the issue here, and how he conducted and carried himself. It probably was that ego, and I'm bigger than everybody, and I'm still Shaq, I'm still Big Diesel, even after he retired or towards his latter years. That was that side of him that he should have left on the basketball court. That he's telling Travis, not Travis, but what's his name, Jason, to leave on the football field. You got your ring, which is in football. That's already hard enough. You got yours, right? Probably a future Hall of Famer. So just sit back, enjoy that, enjoy fam. I love that message. So initially, yeah, I was shocked to hear him say it, the things that he said in the midst of him saying that, because yeah, the family part makes sense, but what he needs to enjoy, I found that very profound. So what are your thoughts here? And I feel like other athletes should listen to that too. My goodness. So what are your thoughts on Shaquille O'Neal, Sir Hellman's, saying to Jason Kelce to enjoy life and enjoy marriage?
This to me is a cultural observation.
Mm-hmm.
When I went to college, right. So when I first went to college, I went to a majority. I went to college in Tallahassee, Florida. I've mentioned this before. Tallahassee is a unique place in that it is dominated on the collegiate scene by both an HBCU as well as a majority historically white university in Florida State. So it gives you the opportunity to kind of see how the other side lives, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And you get different experiences and you hang out in different crowds, different social circles, and you kind of see how other groups of people socialize, how other groups of people do certain things. And one of the things that I always used to observe and find very interesting, and this is, mind you, this is college, where in college, the idea is be free, explore, have fun, do your thing, enjoy yourself, right? Like that's the primary approach that most people socially have when it comes to college. And what I used to notice a lot is um whenever I went to parties that were, they used to use the word urban, but urban was just code for black. Um, whenever I would go to like an urban parties where it was catered more so towards the black crowd. The DJ was going to be playing, hip hop music, and mostly the people who were going to be at this venue were going to be black people for the most part. But in addition to black people, it was going to be non-black people who identified more urban slash hip hop or whatever. And one of the things that I always used to notice was that there was to me at least, and maybe I'm a weirdo because I noticed things like this, but there was always a stark dichotomy between how people approached relationships in college, black people or white people, basically, is what I noticed. And one of the things I used to see is whenever I would go to white parties or parties where there was mostly white people, I used to see more couples at this stuff, white kids in college who were coupled up, boyfriend, girlfriend type stuff. Now, granted, you're always going to have your hookups and you're always going to have your people who are doing the single mingle thing. That's going to be an ever present thing no matter what kind of a environment or place that you're in. But it was noticeable to me that the majority of the white parties that I went to, I saw more people coupled up, arriving together, leaving together, doing the couple thing. And whenever I went to the black parties, what I saw more was people trying to get it in. People trying to do more of the hookup type lifestyle. People not necessarily caring about arriving and leaving with the person that you arrived and left with. And the reason why I bring that up is because it started to inform me on the difference in terms of how different cultures approach family values, even going back as young as when you attend college. So I don't think it's an accident that somebody like Shaq is trying to coach somebody like Jason Kelce on how to enjoy family. But the thing about it is, in all likelihood, Jason Kelce does not approach family values in the same way that Shaq did. So it's a lesson that Jason Kelce doesn't even need. Jason Kelce's married and been married. So Jason Kelce, at least publicly, isn't out in the streets trying to live it up and be for the streets the way Shaq was.
He was for the streets.
Shaq was for the streets. Yeah. Jason Kelce isn't for the streets. So Shaq can sit here saying, hey, Jason Kelce, don't take your family for granted. Enjoy retirement and do the family thing. But unbeknownst to Shaq, this is something that Jason Kelce been doing already. So what is the lesson that Jason Kelce needs to learn from this? And see, the thing that I've learned through just watching these guys, and when we talk about this stuff on this channel, and I brought this up before, so I'm gonna bring it up again, is I'm seeing, we talked about CJ Stroud last week, and how many of these we gonna talk about Christian Wood here in a minute, and you got Shaq, you got Zion, you got Paul George, you got Devin Booker, you have these black athletes who seem to be doing things one way. And then you can observe the complete opposite on the other end of the spectrum. I'm looking at people like Matthew Stafford, who's been married with his woman for as long as I can remember. He was a number 1 overall pick, but he just doesn't care to be in the streets the way other guys seem to care about being in the streets, even at his young age. You look at Trevor Lawrence, he's been with his girl since college. Look at Patty Mahomes. You know what I'm saying? Like, you look at some of these people, and it kind of exposes culturally the differences in terms of how we look at family values. Shaq is a result of how his culture told him to look at family values. And so because he was ingrained with that programming growing up and took it with him into adulthood, he made the mistakes that he made, and now he's living in a 100,000 square foot house, feeling lonely by himself. A guy like Jason Kelce isn't going to worry about that because he's been on that family-oriented stuff. And you mentioned Trevor Lawrence, Matthew Stafford, Baker Mayfield is another one. These guys been with their girls married. They don't care about none of this stuff the way people from our culture seem to care about it a little more. So this to me is a cultural observation. I hear what Shaq is saying, and I think that it would make more sense if he was like, telling this to, frankly, a pro athlete who was black getting ready to retire, because it seems as though we need to heed this stuff more than people who aren't black. They seem to have a better foothold on how to handle this stuff than we do. Not to say that all white people do this and all black people don't. Obviously, you do have your white pro athletes who are for the streets, just like you have your black pro athletes who are for the streets. You are going to have people who are for the streets in general. But if I am going to generalize this, it seems to me as though this is the type of rhetoric that is more readily observed when it comes to people from our community than not. And you can correct the set the record straight on me if I'm wrong on that. Anybody any anybody in the comments can set the record straight on that if I'm wrong, or if you disagree, that's perfectly fine. But I think that this is a cultural observation more than anything else. Um, I've seen one too many of these high profile non-black athletes who get drafted number one overall, their lottery picks, Peyton Manning. You know what I'm saying? These guys get into the league and they just seem to conduct themselves when it comes to family values differently. They just don't seem to care as much about being in the streets as we do. I mean, this to me is a cultural observation. So that's why I think Shaq is saying this. He's a product of his environment, and Jason Kelce is a product of his. Jason Kelce been family oriented, so there's no reason for him to heed Shaq's advice on this because he's been on this. He been one of the top players in the league at his position, making a lot of money, contending for Super Bowls, but not being for the streets. He been on that, so he's going to continue, I would surmise, being on that. But I do think that Shaq's words have some merit. I just think that they have some merit more so for people who come from his own community.
That's fair. And that's fair. I didn't quite take it that way, but yeah, that's fair. I'll say this though. Back in my days as a cab driver, I'm spending a lot of time in parking lots, waiting for a call, whatever. So, I'm I'm in one of my locations just hanging out. It's a big ass parking lot. I think it's a Walmart. It's a Walmart. So I'm just in a big ass parking lot, whoop de whoop, just chilling, doing my thing, waiting for a call. So I see a car pull up, not too far from me, kind of thing, but far enough from me. It's an empty parking lot. So I see it and I go, well, why are you parking back here? I'm chilling back here. A couple minutes later, another car parked, the other way, like cops pull up and talk. They could pull. I was like, man, they cops, what's going on? They about to blow my spot. What's happening? And then no, it was just two lovers linking up in the Walmart parking lot. Both of the Caucasian descent. And they were linking up, doing their thing. This guy, some jerk off at Waffle House. This lady over here, some whoop-de-whoop random woman that works, whatever. But they're working people. I'm sure they have families. But they were linking up in that parking lot. Then I started to look out for those kinds of things. I saw it a few more times in my days, just being in parking lots, because that's where these sneaky linkers link up at, apparently. Kind of like a drug deal. And so seeing that happen, observing that, these are regular people. They're not Jason Kelce of the Super Bowl winning, brother of Travis Kelce, hanging out with Swifties and Ice Spice and all these other bootylicious bitches. So he's not in the same boat. Now I hear what you're saying because you're talking about other star athletes, which is fair. But I still think it's something to be said of just if you have been keeping your nose clean, continue, because now you're going to have a lot of time on your hands. Time you didn't have before to get a little messy. Spend that with your family. Do not, dibble and dabble, with the boys out here doing your thing, or you know what I'm saying? Like, still be at home, dog. And I think that's just a good message to any athlete. And if I was at my job crushing it, which I always do, I know I'm doing a good job. But if somebody tells me to keep up the good work, and matter of fact, whenever you see the whatever, and it's like, yeah, I know whenever I see whatever, I should do whatever, but thank you for telling me I'm doing a good job. And I'll take that reminder. You know, this guy really cares about that. Let me not have that slip past me kind of thing. So it doesn't hurt to give feedback to an associate that is doing well. They need that reassurance sometimes. And if Big Diesel, a guy that's been out here and was in the streets, he can come back with a receipt and said, I did it as big as anybody can. Hell, I have an Hellman's jars on my thing. I'm getting paid. Would you like some icy hot? I'm Big Diesel. So I'm getting the bag, but by myself. So I like the message. I think this is for anybody. This is for athletes or anybody in between that's linking up in Walmart parking lots. I'll be seeing y'all. And keep your nose clean and stick to family because that's where you want somebody to be there in your latter days. It's nothing more, nothing, much more beautiful than that. So I hear you. I hear what you're saying, but I also think that it doesn't hurt. He probably needed to hear that.
Yeah, sure. I of course don't disagree that it's a constructive message, but I'm more so looking at the fact that I'm more so looking at who's the one delivering the message.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think it's a coincidence that we have Shaq delivering this kind of message because I think his approach to family values was largely impressed upon him by what his culture told him was the way that he should go about approaching family values.
Fair.
And so that's kind of the angle that I'm looking at it from. So to me, it's less of a pro athlete thing, and it's more of a cultural observation on the different ways that different communities approach family values. Um, and the reason why I say that is because if you isolate life and just look at the bubble of your formative years, right? 18 to 25, 26, 27, or whatever you think the range is for when you live as a single person before
Mm-hmm.
eventually you settle down. I personally believe that there is a discernible difference in terms of how different communities approach those things. And I was informed on that basically during the years that I spent living in a collegiate environment. It was far more prevalent for me to see, you know, people from other communities embracing the, I don't want to say settle down, but embracing the monogamous type, not for the streets mentality is what I'm trying to say, than not. Now, again, there was a spectrum. So everybody was doing it. Everybody
Mm-hmm.
was in the streets. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to say, you know, non-black people weren't in the streets and all black people were. That's not true. Everybody was in the streets, and then you did have some pockets of it within community who were doing the more, guided, not in the streets thing. But in terms of what you're asking me, I saw the most of. I'm gonna be honest. What I saw the most of was, if I was at a party or whatever, big, small, it didn't matter how big the venue. You see these kids in college who are, these white kids in college showing up to the thing, holding hands, being coupled up. And they would leave coupled up, holding hands, whatever. And you would never see that as much, in terms of some of the parties where we would go to and you would see the majority of the people being there in our community. I'm
You
not
don't bring
saying
no
it's right or
sand to the
wrong.
beach, bro. You don't bring sand
Hey
to the
man,
beach,
yeah,
baby.
yeah. Right or wrong, fair or unfair. It's literally a cultural observation to me in terms of how we perceive, family values. And I don't believe in coincidence. I don't think coincidence is a thing. I think that everything happens for a reason. Therefore, if we are going to look at it within the context of professional sports, I don't think it's a coincidence that you see more Peyton Mannings and Matthew Staffords and Baker Mayfields and who else did I mention? Trevor Lawrence. I don't think it's a coincidence that you see more of those kind of guys on the professional athlete level then you see people like Shaq doing those kinds of things. I don't think that's a coincidence. Now the reason for it, I don't know. I'm not a social scientist. Someone help me understand what the reason is. But I just think that that's not a coincidence. And so I think Shaq was a byproduct of what his culture told him was the way that he should conduct himself when it comes to relationships, women, family, all of that. And I think different communities have different tenets when it comes to that. And so Shaq can talk all of this stuff, and I think that's great, and it's cool. And I agree with you. I don't think it's bad that Kelsey have it reinforced, but the likelihood that Kelsey's going to stray away from that, I would gather, aren't very high. Um, be that as it may, they are interesting comments nevertheless. I just don't think it's a coincidence that Shaq would feel that way and that Shaq's experiences have been what they have been. I think a lot of it is culturally based. I really do.
That's fair. Hey, I agree. I hear what you're saying. Because I'm a big, proponent of we need to have um a more structured form of what we call culture, and part of that is family values. And because of the lack of that I personally witness, through growing up and just seeing things. So I do agree that internally there does need to be a restructuring of family values. Um, and I do agree with you that outside of the community, people have more things intact still. They didn't have systemic um, eradication of it, so that's fair. But at the same time, they are going through a systemic eradication, and this is why we're getting a lot of complaints from people that are from the white community about what television, education, and other things have become, because they're starting to witness their decline and family structure due to the Instagrams, the TikToks, and everything in between. So I would say that everybody's under the same type of bombardment. Culture definitely keeps you more close to the vest, which speaks to the things that you've observed. But I would also say that there's an erosion going on there as well.
Yeah.
Um, so hey man, tighten up everybody, and keep it in the pants, man. Go back home to your wife.
Shouts out to Shaq, man. I hope he figures it out. I hope he can get somebody to occupy that big ass house with him.
Yeah, man.
Otherwise it's gonna be him and Shannon Sharp, 50, 60 years old, still out in the streets.
Hey man, silver fox or ball fox, however you want to call it. Like and subscribe, y'all. Screw,
Yeah.
screw.